All right, so the Open is coming up soon, and we wanted to talk through some tips, tricks, tactics, things to do as you sort of cram for the test of the Open for folks who are on the cusp of qualifying for quarterfinals and are worried about it. Right? It's like, okay, I've been training for this. I really want to make quarterfinals. I've been putting in the time on the rings. I can get a few ring muscle ups. Do I have enough to make it to the next stage? Potentially some athletes who are stronger, have all the skills, but struggle with some engine stuff. So sort of thinking through the different avatars of folks who are on this like quarterfinals bubble. They're close to finishing in the top 10% on the Open, but aren't super confident they're going to make it through. There's three reasons that I see that sort of hold folks back. Right, one of them we already mentioned is someone who's trying to acquire skills. Right, it's like, okay, I don't necessarily have enough ring muscle ups. I can't really do strict handstand push-ups, especially under fatigue. The pistols, if they show up, like I got a finicky knee and I just like straight up can't do it. Right. So the gymnastics skills and the gymnastics volume is a big one that holds people back from qualifying for quarterfinals. Another one is just strength, depending on what the tests look like. There might be some sort of barbell ladder, and it's like, okay, I can get to, for women, I can get to the barbell where I'm supposed to snatch 125 or whatever, and I can do absolutely 0 reps. No chance I'm going to hit this weight. And if I could even get one, then all of a sudden I'm jumping thousands of places on the leaderboard and I'm pretty comfortable. I'm going to make it onto the next stage. So there's the athlete who's missing some skills or doesn't have the volume in certain skills. There's the athlete who isn't quite there with the strength to be able to move barbells past the first few in a barbell ladder, or if there's some sort of max test, right? It's just like, okay, your numbers are below the threshold where you're suddenly just accumulating tens of thousands of points on that single workout. And then the third avatar is actually the athlete who is pretty strong, who does have all the skills, but just really struggles in certain conditioning environments. I see this a lot with just like high volume burpees, right? You have someone who's like pretty strong, pretty skilled, can walk on their hands, can clean and jerk something pretty respectable. And then when they have to do whatever, 100 plus burpees in a workout, they're going to get beat by every single person in class who like has an engine at all. And so similar to some of the other situations, it's like kind of doesn't matter how good you are at all this other stuff. This high volume burpee workout that's inevitably going to show up, you're accumulating tens and tens of thousands of points on that one. And you're just like, well, doesn't matter if you get literally first place on one of the other workouts. Like you're not moving on. You just got too many points there. So Luke, I mean, with the caveat that, we're kind of in crunch time, not a lot of time to be like, cool, let's work this 3-week progression to figure this out. What should these folks, these different avatars be thinking about in these final weeks, this month or so leading into Open time?
Yeah. So I think we have, we've obviously got training. People would have accumulated a lot of training progressions and would have been working on, the sort of respective areas that they need to work on. I think right now is going to be that time where, if I think of what I'm writing on people's training right now, when it sort of comes up to that like intended stimulus note, a lot of it is practice competing, and a lot of it is just, hey, try this out, see how it goes. There's not sort of, we're not trying to accumulate X amount of reps of volume under a certain amount of fatigue, or do these sort of hyper focused and sort of things to move people's progressions forward week to week. I think right now people need to get exposure, and they need to, that area that needs more work, they need to be getting, you could say at least 2 touches on it per week in a competitive, like open style workout scenario. So they can actually just practice cracking on with it and seeing where they're at and developing the experience that sort of allows them to navigate those workouts better in the future. And then they probably do still need to be working on a little bit of those bits and pieces in a little bit more of a thought out and progressive way in the background as well. But, that takes a bit of a backseat. So where you may have been devoting your sort of two main chunks of someone's training to this sort of progression that steadily builds volume or whatever it is over time, like now, hey, you've got to be doing an 8-minute AMRAP of this couplet. You need to be doing, this sort of style of a bottleneck gymnastics workout. If we think of like what we have in terms of, when people don't have the skills, I think one of the things that's going to be important is, or whether someone's not strong enough, is that in both of those situations, someone's looking to attain something, whether it's new weight on the barbell or being able to unlock a certain movement. And I think right now, there sort of needs to be this sort of acceptance of like, okay, you are where you're at, and you probably just need to figure out how to refine what you currently have as best as you can to meet the challenge. So you need to probably only work, doubles and triples on your chest bars, but just make them super consistent and don't let yourself break down. Or you need to make sure that you have like a certain cadence with that 225-pound barbell, which is very difficult. You just need to figure out what it is you need to do to get the best score possible and practice that. And if it gets better over the next couple of months before we come into the Open, that's great. That's cool. We want to make sure that you're working towards that, but at the same time, we can't necessarily be expecting to have like these big moments in our training where we're on sort of unlocking these skills or gaining new strengths and that type of stuff, because the training that you should be doing right now doesn't necessarily lend itself to that type of like realization or that type of adaptation. Right now is what people would be sort of considering more of like a peaking moment, and it's practicing the different elements that go into competing. It's practicing warming up properly, making sure you're going through all of the movement prep that you need to, making sure that you're practicing the things outside of your training as well. Are you fueling correctly? Do you have like a good schedule on those days where you're actually really trying to go hard? Or are you, rushing around like a headless chicken all day long and then trying to do an open workout on a Friday night, and it doesn't really lend itself to great performance. So I think right now, like you said, right, it's crunch time. It's probably about doing a lot of last minute prep, but being fairly directed towards that, and and just making sure that you're getting as many touches on competing as you can sort of handle as well. Like I think everyone is a little bit different here, but it might mean that you're able to do really hard CrossFit workouts several times a week, or it might mean that you actually need to build that ability up a little bit and progressively get to somewhere like that over the next couple of months. If you're a little bit you're not as strong in that area.
Yeah, totally. I think that what you're saying about trying to have like a realistic expectation for how much improvement you're going to make, and then trying to focus in on that is really strong advice, right? Like you mentioned, the hay is sort of in the barn with how much progression you're going to make for big picture strength stuff, ability to tolerate like a ton of volume of certain movements. It's not like, okay, we're going to work this like 3-week progression, or this 3 months of progress into a 3-week progression, right? Which is not going to happen. I do think sometimes people get a little bit confused or unrealistic with their expectations about how much improvement they can make just kind of peaking for the Open. But like you said, being pretty clear about, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm not going to suddenly switch over to being able to do, big sets of 10 of chest to bar pull-ups. Cool. Like, let me practice like doubles and singles. Like, that's a really, really good idea. Okay. I'm not going to suddenly, be able to just hammer squat cleans at 225, like 1 rep every 3 to 5 seconds. Like, that's not realistic. Okay. Let me practice doing those reps one rep every 30 to 60 seconds when I'm like really tired, to see if I can even do it. So I think that that's really, really, really good advice, right? Is like, be realistic and then like practice those scenarios, because you want to try to get comfortable with what you can actually do. And then you can actually continue to eke out progression, right? You can improve your ability to do doubles and singles on chest to bar pull-ups. You can't improve your ability to do these like heavy squat clean singles under fatigue. You're just not going to, make like a three tier step change in a few weeks. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that we as much as like adapting to training is happening very differently for everyone. And you could be in a situation where you do actually start to, PR on stuff and make that headway. Maybe the open sort of brings about, or prepping for the open, or maybe this sort of going into the new year brings about a newfound focus where you're dialing in all those other things, and all of a sudden you sort of start to experience some real positive compounding effect in about a month's time. Like maybe that happens. But I think, yeah, like you said, the expectation right now should be just like, you've got what you've got, start to work on those elements, which are just going to sort of refine that and give you the sort of best outcome on game day. And I think that this is something that as much as people, as marginal gains, right, as much as people, think that, okay, how you set your workout up, or I mean, I know now that, does it happen in the open if you film your workouts? Have you got to set your room up in a certain way? I think you do, don't you?
Oh, yeah. So I feel like the rules on this have been changing. Yeah. But if you do film it, then like you do have to have at least definitely for quarterfinals, it was like, this has to be this far away, this has to be that far away. I don't remember if it was that specific for the open. I do think it was, though.
Yeah, I mean, but like, say with the open, if if you're doing kipping gymnastics or something like that, getting yourself set up with a couple of plates either side of you, so you can just step onto the plates and put your hands straight on the bar and just get straight into your set. Like doing something like that can actually have like doing that versus jumping up, re-gripping and fiddling around and getting up there. Like those little tactical things can actually have a good sort of benefit. And if you are really trying to make a push for quarterfinals, it could actually end up being something positive that sort of helps you get there. But like those are like small little things that I think sometimes get dismissed, or people just, for whatever reasons, they sort of see as unnecessary. Like it is sort of part of the sport, and as much as like the fittest people out there, they don't necessarily need them. For a lot of people, like there are those little things that you can just start to dial in, you can start to think about. I know it can seem sort of like silly, but just getting used to getting into a rowing machine and just getting the machine ticking over whilst you're sort of getting yourself set up, and like those little things are pretty important like right now to sort of practice, because the little micro decisions that you make in training and how you start to basically go about workouts now, like that stuff comes together during the open. And I think that when I look back at like my better performances in the open, it was when I had a couple of months in the lead up to it thinking, right, how am I going to do this in the open? And it's not necessarily the same as how you train all the time, because that would just be super exhausting. And you're probably just leaving some things on the table in terms of having some like directed adaptation to certain elements of your training. But like right now, it's actually like crack on with it and perform these workouts as if you are being judged as well. I think that's huge. Like actually making sure that you, if you're like looking at video of you training and you can't
film yourself.
Film yourself. Getting used to that type of stuff is going to be important. I often say to people like, hey, like if you look at your reps and you find it difficult to sort of like count in a very like 1, 2, 3 sort of at that cadence, then most likely you're going to get no reps at some stage, because there's going to be a rep where either it looks 50-50 or the judge isn't able to keep up. So just try to work off that, and that's also usually pretty beneficial for people's pacing. But yeah, just getting used to those sort of standards. I feel like that type of stuff should just always be a thing that's going on in training. But it is surprising like how many people come open or quarterfinals or whatever it is, they've been doing a certain movement a certain way for the past year, and all of a sudden someone's like watching it and counting it. They're like, no, that's not how you do it. And they get frustrated, and it's like, how is this the case? It's like, okay, well. So yeah, I think that getting used to those like little bits as well are going to be important. If, say, for example, you're doing open workouts as part of like a Friday Night Lights situation, or more of a training environment where you don't necessarily have control of the time, you've also got to get used to maybe like actually not being able to warm up as long as you want to, or maybe, or you just need to be better organized. But, being able to just sort of like tap into that intensity pretty quickly, and, not having to go through all of your usual situation, like a little bit like competition, right? I think that's some of the stuff that can be quite helpful. Because always like during qualifiers or during the open, I don't know, there's always like one little logistical detail which can sort of like trip people up, whether it's having enough memory on your phone, or all this type of stuff. I mean, not to turn this into just like a super logistics admin style episode, but I think that those things are actually are important as well, and you sort of just got to take care of that, because they're the type of things as well that you make that mistake once and once only, and it's a quick, easy change to rectify that.
Yeah, I think that the idea of all these like small things being dialed in, I think, is important. Right? It's like, okay, yeah, you should be thinking about that kind of stuff. And the kind of person who does think about that kind of stuff is probably the kind of person who's going to do a lot of other stuff well also. But I do also think it's important to like partially disagree with you, where it's like, being good at getting into and out of the rower is probably not going to be the difference between someone making quarterfinals or not. Right. It's like, that's important, but that's not going to be the thing. I'm sure for some person out there, they like, they're just that one person right on that threshold, and they, screwed up their strap and like their shoe fell off or something. And they're like, oh no, like I can't do the workout again. And they ended up missing by, whatever, like 3 calories or something. I'm sure that that's happened in the world at some point. But for most people, it's going to be like, okay, you got whatever 1 muscle up, and if you had gotten 4, like you would have moved on to the next stage. Like, okay, you got 0 repetitions at this barbell and some heavy snatch, and if you had gotten 1, you would have moved on to the next stage. Or you lifted 20 pounds under the lift that you like just missed on your 1 rep max attempt, and you didn't have a chance to try that again. If you had hit that one that was 20 pounds heavier, like you would have moved on to the next stage, right? That's the kind of thing that I think is like this avatar of an athlete is right on that threshold, and they need to have a good day on muscle ups, or they need to have a good day on strict handstand push-ups, or they need to just like hit a PR in a workout to actually hit something at like one of the heavy barbell weights. And yeah, I mean, I just don't have like a great answer of like, oh, cool, like this is what you should definitely do to make that happen. But I think that understanding that the lowest hanging fruit is not necessarily going to be the thing that moves you on, right? It's like, okay, this is like a hard thing that you probably know and you've been working on forever, where you're like, I know I need to be better at muscle ups. I've been trying for the last year, when I just missed quarterfinals last year, to be able to do these stupid things after a bunch of thrusters. I just like still kind of can't totally do it. Okay, what should I do in the next month to figure that out? I don't know. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you. I think that the difference between someone making it or not making it isn't going to be like those little tactical things that you can do. But I will say that like maybe for that individual who on the first workout is going to potentially get their ass kicked by a bunch of like just average gym goers who have like a decent engine, and you know, they have like the person who's got all the skills. Like for that individual, they probably do need to start like getting their ass in gear on certain workouts and actually just being like, okay, this is how I approach it. I've got to keep moving. I've just got to keep going. So I think that's where it can be helpful is you know, setting things up in a way which minimizes chalking up, putting your hands on your knees, and feeling sorry for yourself. Because most likely as well, that person is probably pretty confident with making it through, but then they usually get tripped up by that workout which has got like a bunch of high volume, you know, rowing and wall balls or burpees or dumbbell snatches and burpee box jump overs and that type of thing. And for that individual, they've probably got the skills, and they've probably got the sort of movement speed to move ahead in the game to sort of quarterfinals, but that's the thing that's lacking. They've probably got a few more of those workouts in quarterfinals as well if they make it. But yeah, I think really like if you're in a situation where you just don't have the thing that is going to help you qualify, or is going to be have the sort of biggest positive effect, like if you don't have that thing, you've just got to try to make sure that you're setting yourself up to give yourself the best shot at that. And that might mean that, like, you know, you practice a bunch of bottleneck style workouts and you just try to make sure you get into that point in the workout where that movement comes up and you're as fresh as possible. Or, you know, it could be that you're going into that workout which has got a very heavy barbell, and you need to make sure that, like, once you get there, you feel strong enough to go for that 1 rep max attempt.
Back.
Yeah, so for that individual who is in a situation where they just don't have the thing, which is going to have sort of positive effect on them qualifying or not, you know, that sort of like key to them qualifying. They obviously can hope that it doesn't come up and that something else comes up.
Fingers crossed,
right? Just like, yeah. But I think that, you know, practice bottleneck style workouts where you are getting to that situation and you're as fresh as possible, just to sort of have some attempts at the ring muscle ups, or have some attempts at that heavy barbell. You know, try to break down as best as possible some of the things that you feel like you need to be in your favor to have as you know, whether it's, because I think that, like, people get into a bit of a tricky situation where they may have it in a training session, but then in the workout it just isn't there. I think if you are in a situation where you just don't have the skill, then you're probably you're probably going to have better expectations. Probably going to have more aligned expectations, just because, you know, okay, well, if I don't have this fresh, then how is it going to happen when I'm, you know, knee deep in a bunch of lactate and nastiness. But for the person who actually has it, you know, they probably just need to think about it, think about how they can best approach a number of situations and a number of workouts. They need to practice it in a high turnover workout. They need to practice it in a sort of bottleneck style workout, because, you know, if they are able to get that snatch or that muscle up or whatever it is, that strict handstand push up, they're going to move ahead of a lot of people who were unable to get it and that were in a similar situation to themselves. But yeah, I think big picture, having clear expectations that, like, now is not the time to, you know, be putting all of your focus in on getting like a stronger 1 rep max chest to ring pull up to help your ring muscle ups. Like that's, you know, like that's not going to happen right now. What you probably need to do is just, you know, keep on top of your skill work with that type of stuff, but also practice doing it in a fatigue setting as well. You know, maybe putting some of this more refined skill work type stuff at the end of a session, So you practice doing it when you're tired. Like doing a couple of little easy changes like that can be helpful for people. And just understanding what the challenge is now. The challenge isn't necessarily like doing the skill as best as you can and working towards virtuosity. The challenge now is, hey, we've got to do this and we've got to do it when we're probably pretty tired and in a situation which is most commonly found in CrossFit workouts. So yeah, I think if you're one of those people who doesn't have the thing, the strength or the skill, you've got to set yourself up for success and do training that does that. If you're the person who probably has all of those things, but you will just probably find that one workout puts you down on the leaderboard because of some capacity, you need to practice pushing and doing so in a way that sets you up for success and allows you to be in a recovered situation when you come to the open, but like making sure that you're working on all those little micro decisions and all those little things that usually stop you from being consistent with your pacing and that type of stuff, like making sure you're working on that now as well.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, right? It's like, like we've been saying, you don't have that much time left. So the best thing you can do is try to recreate the scenarios that are going to occur and practice them in a setting that's as close to the real thing as possible, right? That's like actually set up with standards, right? That have someone judge you, have someone give you no reps, do it with someone else around to try to raise the stakes a little bit. So that is something that this is something that is a little tactical that I think could make the difference for folks, because I think that every year you see people who go into one of these open workouts with pretty unrealistic expectations about where they're going to get to because they watched the games athletes do it. And they're like, okay, cool. Well, I'll just be like a little bit worse than them, but it's going to be basically the same. And then they just get like absolutely destroyed by the workout. And then they have an opportunity for a second attempt, but the first one, their expectations and their pacing was so completely off that they are able to make like a big improvement. But I think they're still leaving like capacity on the table, right? Because it's like if you did your first attempt better and then you improved on that, like you would actually your final score would be quite a bit better. So just trying to have an understanding of like what this is actually going to feel like, try to recreate the intensity and like the stakes a little bit, because that's another thing that gets people every year. They're like, oh man, I'm like so stressed out and amped up about this workout because it actually matters now. And I'm not used to having like this huge adrenaline dump going into a thing like this. And all of a sudden, like I got dry mouth and like I'm like a little twitchy and I feel real good on like the first, 90 seconds of this thing and then just like catastrophically fall apart where, they've been working on their pacing and all that stuff for a year. And it's like, okay, well, let's see if we can recreate that like intensity a little bit. So you're able to translate some of the pacing stuff that you've practiced into the actual like high stakes workout. That's if there is a way to practice that, I think that is something that could get some folks like a lot more reps on an AMRAP, right? A lot quicker time on a for time piece. So that's tough to practice, but I think there's something there. Cool. All right. We'll stop that.